Today on Locked On Red Wings, we welcome back Andrew Rinaldi of Field Pass Hockey Griffins, and he's going to help us preview the Grand Rapids Griffins season.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for WWJ News Radio, while Scotty is the host of Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today we are happy to welcome back Andrew Rinaldi. He is a beat reporter for Field Pass Hockey, covering the Grand Rapids Griffins and apparently the Chicago Wolves, which I'm going to ask you about later because that seems blasphemous. But it's been a while since we've had you on, because I think it was had to have been a little bit after the new year, because it was near the end of the season we had you come on and talk about the Griffins season up until that point. But no better time to bring you back on to preview the Griffins season. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing great. This is my element. Hockey season's right here. The Griffins start on Friday, and I couldn't be more juiced for this. I had a fun off season. I kind of got lost in the mountains for 2 weeks out in Wyoming, and you come
like
back
lost or
well, no, just kind of like disconnect, get off the grid, and don't have my phone buzzing from 1,000 emails from the office. So it's, you kind of appreciate the smaller things in life after one of those. And now I come back to civilization, and I'm ready for some hockey.
Heck yeah. That's the best answer I think I've ever heard to how are you doing. Got lost in the mountains in Wyoming, and I'm back and ready to talk about some puck, baby. That might be the best answer I've ever heard.
Usually when I guest and people ask me that, I am I have no clue what to say, because how am I doing? I live the same day over and over every single day. It's called having a 9-to-5 job. So to have somebody come on and be like, yeah, I actually had fun with my life. That's something interesting.
Try to live the dream every day, man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But yeah, we brought you back today, obviously, to preview the Grand Rapids Griffins season. Scotty and I obviously have been covering the Red Wings and their roster cuts, who they've been sending back down to Grand Rapids all season long. The Red Wings made several acquisitions in free agency for depth pieces like Austin Czarnik, Matt Luff, guys who got sent down to Grand Rapids, as well as obviously the big names like Simon Edvinsson and Sebastian Cossa are going to be making their professional debuts in North America down there in Grand Rapids this season. So all of a sudden, this Grand Rapids Griffins team that looked like, or that did not make the playoffs last year, looks really exciting. But I want to get your perspective, Andrew. I guess this first question is, how excited are you for this Grand Rapids Griffins this season?
Yeah, well, you kind of touched on it. I mean, just with between Edvinsson and Cossa, having those big names that were, top picks off the draft board, immediately there's a different feel to this team. And, having that kind of star power to watch out for, again, I kind of already said it's going to feel different, but I can't emphasize enough how, last year it was all the whole, all eyes were on Jonathan Berggren, and then, you had your pieces here and there like Donovan Sabrango and Jared McIsaac, but between the health and the lack of depth for the team, after they kind of got into a lull in the second half of the season, it was really kind of hard for fans to get up, and they kind of, I don't want to say they tanked, but it was a real struggle to get momentum going. And I mean, you saw they ended up missing the playoffs there at the end. So I think that between Sean Horkoff, the GM for Grand Rapids, and obviously Stevie up there in Detroit, they've kind of come together and realized that, the best thing for your prospects is to get them to play meaningful games in April and hopefully in the June from May into June. So they're bringing in, veterans like Czarnik and Luff that have been around the block and know what they're doing. Steven Kampfer is another guy in the blue line. Horkoff made an emphasis to get to bring back some vets like Dominic Shine, Brian Lashoff, who's been in this organization for a million years. And he's gonna be huge for Albert Johansson and Simon Edvinsson, these guys who are kind of getting their feet wet in the North American game, what better than the guy, who's basically been Mr. Griffin his whole career to kind of show him the ropes and really get him in the pro hockey. So there's certainly a different kind of buzz coming in with this team, more depth, more, I guess I would say definitely more talent. It's certainly more raw talent. I mean, I don't know if I'd expect Edvinsson to come in and try and be the defenseman of the year right off the bat. I do think that, expectations might have to be tempered a little bit. You're going to have, Cross Hannes is making his pro debut and everything. Yeah. I mean, it's talent. There's a lot of talent, but again, it's very raw. And I think it's gonna take some time for these guys to get adjusted, get into the program. And they're really going to lean on the vets like Hirose and Chris Golo to kind of show them the ropes and show them how to get it done in a day in and day out basis. But the potential is there for this team, I think, to really make some noise. I think this division's wide open. Chicago's not nearly the juggernaut it was last year. They're not going to beat you in 9 out of 10 games. I think if the pieces come together, this is going to be a fun year, Griffins hockey.
I swear that when we had you on last year, you said on this show, you were like, yeah, next year, like, we're going to have a lot more talent over here. And like, that was kind of like writing on the wall because of the amount of talent we had in Europe and everything. And a lot of those dudes were going to come over. And like, we're seeing that obviously, but even besides the European dudes, like you mentioned some of those names, like this is something that I'm like 90% sure we talked about that last time. I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but like, I think we talked about that. And so it's really cool to see that just come to fruition, I'm sure. Can we just like get right into Edvinsson, Brian? Is there anything else
go for it?
Get right into Edvinsson?
He's the biggest name.
Yeah. So let's just like start off hot and just go with the biggest name on the team. Obviously will be the biggest name on the team. You talked about maybe tampering expectations a little early. What's, very exciting, obviously, to be able to have that in the lineup every night. What are the expectations, maybe performance-wise, playing time-wise, right off rip, I think is a big question for a lot of people. What can we expect?
Yeah, I think that, Coach Simon's definitely going to kind of ease him into his role, but I don't doubt that Edvinsson would have the talent to maybe make the Red Wings, but do you really want him playing 10 minutes a night, or do you want him playing power play, penalty kill, playing top line minutes night in and night out down here in Grand Rapids, especially, coming over from Europe, learning that pro game on that smaller ice? I mean, when you got the size of a Simon Edvinsson, I don't think he's really concerned about, crashing into the boards with some of these bigger forwards, but it's an adjustment and it's going to take time to get used to it. And I think early on, they're going to lean more on, a guy like Steven Kampfer or, Donovan Sobrango coming off his excellent World Juniors and kind of give him more of the responsibility. But you're going to definitely – you can't keep a guy like Edvinsson down in the lineup for too long. I mean, he's just too good, got too much potential. And once the wheels start getting rolling, I mean, he's going to be your number one guy. I mean, it's the writings on the wall. You don't draft a guy with that kind of pedigree and not expect him to be your top guy going in deep into the season. So, I mean, it's hard, it's hard to kind of rewind the tape, but I mean, Moritz Seider had to spend, time down here in Grand Rapids before he came up and he was the absolute stud that he was. And Edvinsson is going to be going through the same motions, going to be going through the same, he's going to be asked to do the same duties that Mo had down here. And, I don't even think Simon's going to be the first call up. I think they'd rather go to a guy like Sobrango first and keep Simon down here and keep feeding him those minutes and feeding him and getting him ready for this tough pro game that's going to be expected of him in the National League. So it's going to be a strong, healthy dose of a lot of Simon Edvinsson, and it's going to be a pain for the other teams here in the Central Division because, I mean, we've seen his smooth skating. We've seen his gap control. I mean, he's just an absolute monster there on the blue line, and one that Grand Rapids sorely needed last year. I mean, they just lot of leaks on that defense, and he's going to be the guy that's going to be anchoring them, cleaning them up. So definitely, I mean, obviously the number one name to look out for. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing to look out for with him or the biggest thing for him to work on, rather, is just adjusting to the size of the ice. I think that's really main. If you watched him play in the preseason, I think he just was struggling understanding like how much time he had. Like his decision making wasn't there because there was so much less space to work with on the ice. So I think once he adjusts that, he'll be okay because he was dominant over in the SHL. That's why he was nominated for Rookie of the Year. But we got to move on. I got to get to an ad break. I do want to, when we come back, I'm going to ask you about a bunch of other players that are making their debut at the Griffins this season, namely the 15th overall pick in that same draft, Sebastian Cossa. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about SimpliSafe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Here's why you're going to love it. With 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency. Even if you're not home or you can't be reached, SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. Save 20% off on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're talking to Andrew Rinaldi of Field Pass Hockey. He is the beat writer for the Griffins for Field Pass Hockey. And I wanted to move on, get away from talking about Simon Edvinsson because, I mean, we could talk the whole episode about Simon Edvinsson, but there's so many players to talk about. And I teased it at the end of the first segment, but Sebastian Cossa is making the jump from juniors to professional hockey. He played pretty well last year with the Edmonton Oil Kings. His Edmonton Oil Kings ended up winning the WHL championship. What can we expect from Sebastian Cossa? Or I guess, what are you expecting from Sebastian Cossa in his first season as a professional hockey player?
Yeah, well, the thing right now is, I mean, I don't know if anyone understands kind of quite how young Cossa is. He hasn't even turned 20 until the end of November. So he's got, you know, the size, the athleticism, the talent to obviously be a stud franchise goalie as he was drafted to do so. But, you know, I don't think a lot of people who aren't quite as in touch with the AHL don't realize just how good the league is. And, you know, no matter how much of a raw talent Cossa has, I mean, he's got two good goalies in front of him for one. And, you know, he's not really, I don't think he's not really just going to jump in and just grab that starter's crease, you know, within his first week of playing or anything. I mean, in front of him, you have, you know, UC Okinora that they brought in, Olympic gold winning goaltender with 9 years of pro experience over in Europe and some in the AHL as well in his earlier years. So a guy who's been around the block and is really probably going to anchor down that starting goaltending position. And then you have Victor Brattstrom as well, who, you know, had a shaky start to the year last year, but that second half of the season when Pickard was called up, he was the guy.
He looked good in preseason too.
I think he's really turned the corner when he's got his confidence going. He's a solid option there in net. So, you know, Cossa he's kind of in the same position as Edvinsson. He's just coming in and learning what it takes to be successful in professional hockey at this level. You know, I mean, you can go anyone. There's so many cases on and on about guys who dominate in juniors, and it's tough to take that next step.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that Cossa is not going to be kind of expected to be the savior of this team, to jump right in and kind of be fed to the wolves. He's got two guys in front of him who are going to push him to be better. They're going to teach him how, to handle himself as a pro on and off the ice. And, just being in that environment, being in the practices, being around the teams, it's going to make you a better player. It's going to challenge you to be a better player. And I think it's going to serve him, his development better than it would just, going back and dominating at juniors again, so I wouldn't even expect him maybe to kind of grab some starts, through the year, but he's not going to be the guy who's going to kind of lead this team through a playoff run and be that stud that's going to, steal a series or two here. I still think he's got some time to work on some of the finer points of his game. But a lot of, obviously, all the promise in the world. You can't just deny what an absolute monster he is in net. And he's going to have his opportunities, but between adjusting to the pro game and the two guys ahead of him, I think it's still a little too early to call, the next monster in net as just, it's still just a little too early,
He could be there for, he will be there for years, presumably.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, this isn't a lot of times with forward, really just any non-goalie really that are like top prospects we see, like, oh, if they spend 1 year in the AHL, like maybe 2, if like highly regarded prospects like that, people think just fly through. Like, Cossa could be there for like legitimately 5 years and it wouldn't be like a blasphemous thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the crazy part about him already being in the A to me.
Mm-hmm.
Take the Red Wings tandem, for example. People still consider Nedeljkovic and Husso a young tandem, even though they're 26 and 27, just because goalies tend to take longer to develop. And so, so Cossa, and that's the thing too, is when you watched the preseason, like, you could see the ceiling for Cossa and Edvinsson, like you could see why they were drafted, but you also saw a lot of what they needed to work on. So, like, it's really exciting having them take that jump to professional hockey, or at least Cossa making that jump to professional hockey, as Edvinsson already was over in Europe. But it's just more about the development that I'm excited about than I'm not expecting him, and nor should anyone really expect him to go over there and just immediately dominate, because we saw him struggle at times in the preseason, especially with the thing with him I noticed a lot was positioning, getting caught a little bit. But it's just that they drafted him for size and athleticism, and he definitely showed that off in the preseason.
Yeah, you can't coach the kind of size that Cossa brings you.
Yeah.
So positioning is, as long as he can work on that, then, there's the sky's the limit for this young kid.
Cross Hannes is someone that I really wanted to talk about. Like, he's a guy that had a phenomenal preseason, really turned heads. Prospect tournament, like, really turned heads, red and white game. Like, he's somebody that, and you kind of alluded to him at the beginning of the show too. Like, that's a dude that I think a lot of people maybe got familiar with is not the right phrase, but that a lot of people around, like, fans of the Red Wings organization were like, oh, like, this dude really kind of balled out here in the preseason. So talk about him, like, going to Grand Rapids and everything, and what, I don't like, his role, just expectations for him too.
Yeah, for sure. He was a guy, you get all these first round guys that, you hear all about, you read all about, and then it's some of these other players that kind of, I wouldn't even say he fell through the cracks, but it just don't really get the media attention until they really show up, and they force you to realize that, like, oh, this guy, he's a real player. And I think Hannes is one of those. And same situation. You got a 20-year-old guy who has all the talent, but has to kind of dip his toes into the pro game and kind of get comfortable. And this is where, again, kind of Yzerman and Horkoff have worked to bring in a lot of vets back in the Grand Rapids, because you can have all the promising young prospects, but if they don't have anyone to show them the ropes in the locker room, don't have the leaders to kind of that have been around the block to show you exactly what, is expected of you at this level, it can be tough for a lot of these young kids. And so, you have guys like Dominic Shine, Tyler Spezia, who are signed to AHL deals, who, again, have been around the block for years and years and have gained the trust of the coaching staff and the front office to show these guys exactly how it's done. And, Hannes might he might start off kind of having to earn his playing time, but I mean, he could easily be like a Jonathan Berggren who, started off maybe on the third line or so at the beginning of last year. And by season's end, I won't say he's the leading scorer because Berggren's back, and that's going to be huge for this team. And but
he was so close,
yeah,
close.
I was kind of getting greedy. I wanted Soderblom down here too, but I guess he was just too good in the preseason.
Well, we'll talk about that at the end if you want to. Yeah, you might still be seeing a lot of him.
Oh, now I'm getting excited. But yeah, he's going to be one of those guys. I think that it's going to take time to kind of understand his role, work some chemistry around in the locker room, see who plays well with them, see who he plays well with, and again, the talent is there. There's no doubting that. It's just a matter of kind of staying healthy on this team and having all the pieces come together. And he's again, another guy who's going to be learning the ropes before he gets to become a every night contributor for this team.
Man, there are just so many players that I want to talk about, but just so little time because there are other things that we want to talk about as well in this episode. One of which is Elmer Soderblom, we're going to ask you about, but I also want to ask you about how you think the Griffins will stack up in the division in this upcoming season. And we'll get to those things after we come back. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are joined by Andrew Rinaldi of Field Pass Hockey. He's a writer for Field Pass Hockey, covering the Griffins and the Chicago Wolves. You know what? Let me get this out of the way. I got to ask, how do you cover two teams that are division rivals? I got to know that first.
It's tough when, when they're playing each other. And, it's easy because I have both my eyes focused. It's really tough when they're playing at the same time. And Chicago is playing Milwaukee while Grand Rapids is playing Iowa. I have to have two streams going, basically. I have one where the screen's up on my laptop, the other one where the audio is playing, so I can at least try and keep track of both of them at the same time. It's it can be exhausting at times, but I'm a guy who really can't get enough hockey, so I don't mind it at all. When they're playing each other, it's all about kind of as a Wings guy growing up in Michigan my whole life, you got to really kind of take the bias out of it and just kind of appreciate it for what it was. Now, last year was really kind of the Wolves just kind of taking the Griffins to town and taking their lunch money on the playground all season long. So it was just it was a little tough, but they were Chicago was an absolute juggernaut last year. They were a fun team to watch, and I'm a guy who just loves watching good hockey. And if I can be provided that, then the bias doesn't really matter in my book.
Gotcha.
So I'm hearing you like the Griffins more, is what I'm hearing.
And in my heart, yeah, of course I'm going to be pulled.
Okay, that's all I need. That's all I need.
He doesn't want you sitting on that fence. He got his answer that he wanted. He's got a narrative to push.
That's all I need, baby.
So yeah, let's talk a second about Elmer Soderblom, because obviously he made the Detroit Red Wings roster. They're carrying 14 forwards, 7 defensemen, 2 goalies. There is speculation, however, that Elmer Soderblom may not be on the roster long, and it could be because of Oscar Sundqvist's injury, may possibly be keeping him out that first couple games. And once he's healthy, it could just come down to Elmer Soderblom doesn't have to go through waivers to get sent down. Now, it's also very possible that they go with the best player available, and if they think Elmer Soderblom is better than Adam Ernie or Sundqvist or whatever winger you want to throw in there, they could just waive him, because the Wings are trying to go for a most competitive. But there is definitely a situation where, because Joe Veleno and Elmer Soderblom don't have to go through waivers, that you see Elmer Soderblom, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point you do. I don't want to see him down there. I want to put that out there for the people listening.
They literally made a comment to like on Tuesday. They literally said by like before opening night, even like one of those guys might get sent down. Like before they even play a game, like it's possible that one of those two guys get sent down. And like nothing's a guarantee, and it's very fluid. But yeah, though the Velenos and Soderbloms of the world are definitely the first people that the first players that people look at for when.
I mean, how does that shake up?
Happen.
How does that shake up your lineup, though? I mean, you already have a stacked offensive lineup with Hiroshi, Crisculo, Berggren, and Andreasen. And we didn't even talk about Andreasen because I'm really interested to see how his season shakes out. Andreasen, Czarnik, and Luff all the way down. I mean, where would you slot Soderblom right away? I mean, 6th-round pick coming over to North America.
Put him right in front of the net. That's exactly where you slot him.
He's got soft hands in front of the net. He's proven that.
Yeah, and in the cap world, it's those waiver exemptions that really, like, a guy who might not, necessarily need to be down in the AHL, but he's got flexibility in waivers, and for a lot of these young players, it's better to serve them, playing 15, 16 minutes a night on first line in, say, Milwaukee than it would be playing 8 minutes on the fourth line in Nashville. I'm looking at you, Phil Tomasino. There's absolutely no reason that kid should be in Milwaukee, but they just have an embarrassment of riches there in that for the Admirals. And I think you're going to see a lot. I mean, I think Soderblom, the kid, what more can be said about him that hasn't really already been said. And when Sundqvist does come back, it might just be, we really like what you got going on, but we don't want you playing 7 minutes, on the fourth line. So we'll get you down to Grand Rapids. He might need to, I think his footwork, I'm not in love with his footwork, and that might be something he's got to kind of work on down there in Grand Rapids.
Big guys often struggle with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're an absolute giraffe out there, it's tough, but he at that point, it all just comes down to, cap compliance and what's easiest. Would you rather have Elmer down there developing his game, or would you rather, Arizona swipes Adam Ernie from under your nose and now you have one less guy to play down there in your bottom six?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's really good. It comes down to, I mean, they're going to do whatever gives him the best opportunity to develop and get consistent minutes, but also they're now in a position where they want to give themselves the best chance to win. So you kind of got to weigh those two options. So I don't know, while Soderblom made the initial roster, and I'm hyped about that. I'm so excited that he did, because I mean, it says a lot about what they think of Soderblom. It's tough to look at it and be like, yeah, he's staying for the whole season when you understand the situation. And especially as more guys come back from injury. I mean, when Robbie Fabry's healthy, probably around January, maybe late December, then what are you going to do? Because now you have another winger, or he can play center, but he's mostly a winger at this point in his career, that you're going to have to is going to push everyone else down the depth chart. He's going to probably play in your bottom six, but I mean, then what do you really do with Adam Ernie and Sundqvist? I mean, Sundqvist, it's a great problem to have. And Scotty and I have talked about it. The Red Wings have a great problem this year, in which they have a lot of roster competition, which is something they haven't had in recent years. But now we're starting to talk about the Red Wings. So let's pivot back to Griffins. My last question for you that I have is, how do you think the Griffins, with this influx of, and as you put it, raw talent is down in their system, how do you believe they stack up against the other members of the what is it, Central Division that they play in?
Yeah, I think Nashville loaded up in Milwaukee. They were able to lose Connor Ingram, the waivers, and they're kind of just like, nah, because they have two stud goalies there already. They have a loaded lineup. When you're able to send Phil Tomasino down because of what you got up there in Nashville, I mean, that's just an embarrassment. I think Milwaukee is going to be the top dog. I don't think Chicago is going anywhere. Carolina's organizational depth is just absolutely absurd. I think they have possibly the best goalie that's down there in the AHL, and Pyotr Kochekov. But I think the rest of it is wide open. I mean, I'm not totally sold on Rockford. Iowa's, they had Marco Rossi's up there in Minnesota now, and there's not a whole lot of confidence, I think, in the Wild. You got Texas, who they're hot and they're cold. I think if Grand Rapids, they get if they get these kids rolling, they get them playing the right way, they get them playing responsible, and with the influx of vets they got and every position. You mentioned Andreasen, who's had his time over in Europe. You got Steven Kampfer, Lock and Don have mentioned him a couple times. You got Olkin Yora, who's a guy who's no stranger to big games. I think it's a way different Griffins team. I think they're going to be confident. I think they're going to be flying high. I think they got a chance to make some noise here in the Central. I mean, with the expanded format of playoffs that they're going back to in the American League, there's definitely going to be some playoff games in Van Andel Arena.
Yeah. So with that gut check, though, where do you see Griffins finishing in the division, and do they make the playoffs?
Let the fan overtake your opinion.
I will say that you give this squad a full year. I think you're gonna see some big steps from Edvinsson, Johansson. I mean, just being able to move the puck on the blue line is something that they didn't have last year. If they can stay healthy, I think they got a chance at third in the division. I think Chicago and Milwaukee are still above them, but I still think that they're hosting playoff games in Van Andel. You're giving me the task of going up against, Yaroslav Askarov or Pyotr Kochekov in a playoff series. I can't go against them right now. If you're asking me
when we were doing like our draft profiles and a couple of years ago with Askarov, man, that dude is a monster.
Yeah.
He is unbelievable.
Yeah, and Kochekov is one of the biggest gamers I've ever seen in that. I mean, your first playoff game and you're going after Brad Marchand, like that's
insane.
Yeah.
It's just different between the years, man.
Yeah.
Scotty, any final questions, man?
Yes, I do. Giovanni Smith, give me a rundown on expectations, how much playing time. I just want a quick hitter about Giovanni Smith.
I think Giovanni's gonna be good in keeping, some of these. I'm looking in Iowa's direction, but some of these big American League goons from coming after some of the younger guys, and maybe not the biggest point producers. I mean, you got Hirose and Berggren and Andreasen and all of that. So he's gonna play his role and he's gonna do it well, and he's gonna be a menace, and I'm all for it.
Do you think, when it comes to like line construction, that he'll be a guy that they keep like in the top 6 and are like, hey, we want to give you minutes because maybe we'll have you like back up here at some point? Or do you think it's like at this point you're looking around going, that's pretty much his role, and he's wherever he goes, he's going to be in the bottom 6 just as an enforcer?
Yeah, it depends on your opponent. If you're going up against a rough and tumble team, get that guy out there as much as you can.
Sure.
I've seen him play up in the top 6 in Grand Rapids before, and he's performed well. Again,
he played a lot last year. I feel like, they had him out there for a while last year. Yeah,
for sure. And he was out there with his brother Jamel and everything, and that was pretty cool to see. But he's back in Tampa's organization. But it's different. It's a different lineup, a different phase. If Coach Simon, he's gonna love having Giovanni in there, and if the game dictates it, if you got to kind of play it at a shift by shift basis, but if they're running around throwing their weight around, you got to get Giovanni out there and kind of get a spark plug going for some of the boys if they're not feeling it. I think he's going to be used all up and down the lineup. He could be in the bottom 6, he could be in the top 6. Probably not going to see him out there with Johnny Berggren, but stranger things have happened, so we'll see.
All right. Well, Andrew, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us about the Grand Rapids Griffins and what to expect. Nice having you back. We're definitely going to reach out to you anytime we want to talk about the Grand Rapids Griffins. But before we let you go, why don't you tell the people where they can find you on Twitter, your multiple traitorous Twitter accounts, as well as, what you're working on right now?
For sure. You can find me at FPH Griffins, or if you're kind of interested in some championship hockey, you can find some of my stuff at FPH Wolves. Yeah, that was a bit of a shot.
Just a little.
That was crazy. That was a crazy moment we just had.
You can find my work at fieldpasshockey.com. Currently, Wednesday afternoon, you're going to be seeing some drops for season previews from me for both the Chicago Wolves and Grand Rapids Griffins. I'm going to take a bit of a look before Friday night about the importance of those veteran signings for the Griffins as we kind of head into a bit of a youth movement here that we've been talking about. So we got a couple articles for y'all coming through, and all season, I'm just going to be between the two beats. There's going to be a lot of content coming in, a lot of exciting hockey, and I hope to cover every minute of it.
All right. Well, like I said, thank you
you're
again.
The Locked On Red Wings certified Griffins guy. So
you're a Griffins guy.
I appreciate it. Again, I love being on here, guys. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. It's always a good conversation. Scotty and I will be back with you guys on Thursday, as this is the episode for Wednesday. I get the days all mixed up in my head. On Thursday.
You can just say tomorrow, man.
Tomorrow, yeah. We'll be back tomorrow, guys. I don't know what day tomorrow is, but it'll be tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.